Marcus Chen looked like any other person sitting in Grand Central Station that Tuesday morning. He wore old jeans with holes in the knees and a gray hoodie that had seen better days. His sneakers were dirty and worn out. People walking by would never guess that this man was worth more than $3 billion. He sat in the corner with his laptop, drinking cold coffee from a paper cup. The coffee tasted terrible, but Marcus did not care. He was not here for the coffee. He was here to watch people and to remember what life was really like for most of them. Marcus was the boss of a huge technology company called Technova Industries. Most people had heard of his company, but very few people knew what he looked like. He liked it that way. He could walk around the city and nobody would know who he was. Today was special, though. Marcus had been planning something for months. He wanted to do something that would surprise everyone, including himself. He had grown tired of sitting in fancy offices and talking to other rich people all day. He missed being around regular people who had real problems and real dreams. As he sat there, Marcus watched the crowds of people rushing through the station. Everyone was in a hurry. They carried briefcases and bags, talking on phones or looking at screens. Most of them looked tired or stressed. Some looked sad. A few looked angry. Marcus remembered when he used to be one of those people. 20 years ago he had nothing. He slept on the streets and in shelters. He begged for money to buy food. Those were the hardest days of his life, but they were also important days. They taught him what really mattered. Near the center of the station, there was an old piano. It was not a fancy piano. The wood was scratched and some of the keys were yellow from age, but it was free for anyone to play. Sometimes street musicians would play songs there, hoping people would give them money. Marcus watched a young woman finish playing her violin near the piano. She had long dark hair and wore clothes that looked old and cheap. Her violin case was open on the ground with a few coins and dollar bills inside. She counted the money slowly. Marcus could see the disappointment on her face. It was not much money for all her hard work. The woman packed up her violin and walked away. She looked hungry and tired. Marcus felt his heart hurt watching her. He remembered being that hungry and tired. He remembered hoping that anyone would help him. Marcus closed his laptop and stood up. He walked over to the piano and sat down on the small bench. A few people looked at him, but most kept walking. They probably thought he was just another person trying to make some money by playing music. Marcus put his hands on the keys. They felt cold under his fingers. Some of the keys stuck a little when he pressed them. But Marcus smiled. This piano reminded him of the old keyboard. He used to play at the community center when he was homeless. That keyboard was broken too, but it had given him hope during his darkest days. He started playing simple scales, warming up his fingers. Marcus had learned to play piano when he was a child. His mother had saved money for months to pay for lessons. She worked 2 jobs and often went without food so Marcus could have music in his life. She always said that music was food for the soul. After his mother died and Marcus ended up on the streets, music was the only thing that kept him going. He would find old pianos in churches or community centers and play until someone made him leave. Sometimes he played songs he remembered from his childhood. Sometimes he made up new songs about his life and his dreams. Marcus had not played piano in public for many years. Being rich and famous meant he had to be careful about everything he did. But today, sitting at this old piano in the middle of Grand Central Station, he felt free again. As his fingers moved across the keys, Marcus thought about the song he was going to play. It was a song he had written 20 years ago when he had nothing. He had written it on a piece of paper he found in a trash can using a pencil someone had thrown away. The song was about hope and dreams and never giving up, even when everything seemed impossible. A few more people started to notice the music. They slowed down as they walked by. Some stopped for a moment to listen. Marcus kept his eyes closed and continued playing the warm-up exercises. He wanted to feel the music before he began the real song. Marcus thought about his journey from the streets to where he was now. He thought about all the people who had helped him along the way. The woman at the shelter who gave him extra food. The librarian who let him use the computer even when he smelled bad. The teacher who believed in his ideas when nobody else would listen. He also thought about all the people who were still struggling. Just like that young woman with the violin, there were thousands of them in this city alone. Millions around the world, people who had dreams but no way to make them come true. People who were talented but had no opportunities. People who were hungry and tired and losing hope. Marcus had always planned to help these people someday. He had donated money to charities and built programs for poor kids. But he wanted to do something bigger, something that would really change lives, something that would give people hope the same way music had given him hope all those years ago. He opened his eyes and looked around the station. More people were gathering now, curious about the man playing the old piano. They did not know it yet, but they were about to be part of something amazing, something that would change not just their day, but maybe their whole lives. Marcus took a deep breath. It was time to begin. Time to play the song that had saved his life 20 years ago. Time to share his story with the world. Time to announce the biggest surprise of his life. He placed his hands on the keys one more time, feeling the rough spots and the smooth spots. This piano had probably been played by hundreds of people over the years. Each person had brought their own story, their own dreams, their own hopes and fears. Now it was Marcus's turn to add his story to this old piano. And it was going to be a story that nobody would ever forget. Marcus began to play the first notes of his special song. The melody was soft and beautiful, like a whisper that slowly grew louder. The sound filled the busy station in a way that made people stop and listen. Even with all the noise of trains and talking, the music seemed to float above everything else. The song was different from anything most people had heard before. It was not a pop song or a classical piece that everyone knew. This was something personal and deep. It told a story, without using any words. The melody went up and down like waves, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, but always full of feeling. Sarah Martinez was walking toward the subway after working 16 hours at the hospital. She was a nurse and her feet hurt from standing all day. Her back was sore and she was so tired that she could barely keep her eyes open. But when she heard the piano music, something made her stop. Sarah had been having a hard time lately. The hospital was always busy and there were never enough nurses to help all the patients. She worked extra shifts just to pay her bills. Sometimes she wondered if she had chosen the wrong job. But as she listened to the music, she felt something she had not felt in months. She felt hope. The man playing piano did not look like a professional musician. His clothes were old and simple. His hair needed cutting, but the way he played was incredible. His fingers moved across the keys like they were dancing. Every note was perfect, even on the old piano that was clearly not in the best condition. More people began to gather around the piano. David Kim was one of them. He had just left another job interview that did not go well. David was an engineer who had been looking for work for 6 months. Every day he sent out resumes and went to interviews, but nobody wanted to hire him. He was starting to lose hope that he would ever find a good job again. When David heard the piano music, he felt like the song was speaking directly to him. The melody seemed to understand his frustration and his fear about the future. But it also seemed to say that things could get better, that he should not give up on his dreams. Behind David stood Maria Santos. She was on her way to her second job of the day. Maria cleaned offices at night after working at a restaurant during the day. She also took care of her elderly mother and sent money to her family in another country. Maria was always tired, but she never complained. She knew that hard work was the only way to build a better life for her family, the piano music reminded Maria of songs her grandmother used to sing when she was a little girl. Those songs had been about love and family and never giving up, no matter how hard life became. Hearing this music made Maria feel connected to her grandmother again, even though she had died many years ago. As more people gathered, the crowd became more diverse. There were business people in expensive suits standing next to college students with backpacks. Elderly tourists with cameras stood near young parents with small children. Construction workers, still dirty from their jobs, listened alongside teachers. and shop clerks. Usually, these different types of people would never talk to each other in the subway station. They lived in different worlds and had different problems, but the music was bringing them together. They were all feeling the same emotions as they listened to the beautiful melody. Marcus kept playing, his eyes mostly closed, but sometimes he would open them and look at the crowd. He could see that his music was affecting people. Some had tears in their eyes. Others were smiling. A few were recording the performance with their phones, but most were just standing there completely focused on the music. The song Marcus was playing had been born during the worst time of his life. 20 years ago, when he was sleeping in shelters and eating at soup kitchens, he had written this melody in his head. He had no piano to play it on, so he would hum it to himself as he walked around the city looking for work or food back then. Marcus would sit in the public library during the day because it was warm and safe. He would use the computers there to look for jobs and to teach himself about technology. Late at night, when the library closed, he would go to the community center if it was open. Sometimes there was an old keyboard there that he could play. It was on one of those nights that Marcus first played this song on a real instrument. The keyboard was missing some keys and the sound was terrible, but Marcus did not care. Playing his song made him feel like he was not completely alone in the world. It made him feel like his life still had meaning. Even when everything seemed hopeless. Now, 20 years later, Marcus was playing that same song for hundreds of people in one of the busiest places in New York City. But he was not just playing it for them. He was playing it for his younger self, the scared and hungry young man who had refused to give up on his dreams. The crowd continued to grow. People were calling their friends and family members. "You have to come to Grand Central right now," they were saying. "There is something amazing happening here." Social media posts were starting to appear. Photos and short videos of the mysterious piano player were being shared online, but Marcus was not thinking about social media or fame. He was thinking about the people standing around him. He could feel their emotions as clearly as if they were his own. The tired nurse who was questioning her career choice. The unemployed engineer who was losing confidence in himself. The hardworking immigrant who was sacrificing everything for her family. These were his people. These were the people he had once been. And in a few minutes, he was going to surprise them in a way that would change their lives forever. As the song reached its most emotional part, Marcus pressed the keys harder. The old piano responded with rich, deep sounds that seemed to come from the instrument's soul. The melody soared and dipped, telling the story of struggle and hope, of falling down and getting back up, of dreams that seemed impossible but somehow came true. The crowd was completely silent now except for the music. Even the usual sounds of the train station seemed quieter. It was as if the whole world had stopped to listen to this one man and his piano. Marcus could feel that the song was almost over. Soon he would have to stop playing and face the crowd. Soon he would have to tell them who he really was and why he was really here. His heart was beating fast, but he was not nervous. He was excited. After months of planning, the moment had finally come to change everything. The music continued to flow from the old piano, and the crowd kept growing bigger. What had started with just a few curious people was now more than 100. Word was spreading fast through text messages and social media. People were taking videos and posting them online with captions like "Amazing pianist at Grand Central," and "You have to hear this music." Marcus played his song again, but this time he added new parts to it. He made the melody longer and more complex, responding to the energy he felt from all the people listening. It was like he was having a conversation with the crowd, but using music instead of words. When he played soft, gentle notes, people leaned in closer. When he played loud, powerful chords, some people started crying. Sarah, the tired nurse, found herself standing next to an elderly man in an expensive business suit. Normally, she would never talk to someone like him. He looked like the kind of person who had never worried about money or worked with his hands. But as they both listened to the music, the man turned to her and said, "This music reminds me of my mother. She used to play piano when I was young." Sarah smiled at him. "It reminds me of hope," she said. I have not felt hopeful in a long time. The man nodded like he understood exactly what she meant. They stood together in comfortable silence. Two strangers who had found something in common through the power of music. David, the unemployed engineer, was recording the performance on his phone. But he was not just recording it to show his friends. Later, he was thinking about how he could share this feeling with other people who were struggling like him. Maybe he could post it online with a message about not giving up on your dreams. Maybe this music could help other people the same way it was helping him right now. Next to David stood a young woman with a baby in her arms. The baby had been crying earlier, but now the child was completely quiet, listening to the music with wide eyes. The mother looked exhausted, like she had not slept in weeks. David smiled at her and whispered, "Your baby likes the music." The woman smiled back, and for a moment she did not look so tired anymore. Maria, who worked 2 jobs to support her family, was thinking about her daughter back home. Her daughter loved music and wanted to learn to play piano, but Maria could not afford lessons. As she listened to this beautiful music, Maria promised herself that someday she would find a way to give her daughter piano lessons. Music was clearly something special, something that could bring joy even in the hardest times. Standing near Maria was a teenage boy who had skipped school that day. He had been planning to get in trouble, maybe shoplift something or start a fight with other kids. But hearing this music made him think about different choices he could make. The melody was so beautiful and peaceful that it made him want to do something good with his day instead of something bad. The crowd was becoming more than just a group of individuals. They were becoming a community. People were talking to each other, sharing stories about what the music meant to them. A construction worker told a teacher about how his grandfather used to play accordion. A college student told an elderly woman about her dreams of becoming a musician. A businessman admitted to a street vendor that he had not felt this moved by anything in years. Security guards who worked at the station had noticed the large crowd, but instead of breaking it up, they found themselves listening to one guard. A man named Robert, who had worked at Grand Central for 15 years, had never seen anything like this. People were not pushing or shouting or trying to get somewhere else. They were just standing together, united by the music. Robert walked closer to get a better look at the piano player. The man did not look like anyone famous. He looked ordinary, like someone you might see on the subway every day. But the way he played was extraordinary. Robert had heard many street musicians over the years, but none of them had ever created this kind of magic. More people kept arriving. Some had come because friends texted them to come quickly. Others had seen the videos online and rushed over to see if it was real. A few had just been walking by and got caught up in the crowd. But regardless of how they got there, once they heard the music, they stayed. Marcus could feel the energy of the crowd changing. At first, people had been curious, but cautious. Now they were emotionally invested in what was happening. He could see it in their faces and feel it in the way they were listening. This was exactly what he had hoped for when he planned this day. The song Marcus was playing had evolved into something bigger than what he had written 20 years ago. The crowd was inspiring him to add new sections, new emotions, new stories. It was like the music was writing itself, using his hands and the old piano as tools to speak to everyone who was listening. A news reporter who happened to be in the station made a quick phone call to her editor. "I am at Grand Central, and there is something incredible happening here," she said. "I need a camera crew down here right away." But even as she made the call, she found herself putting away her phone and just listening to the music like everyone else. Children in the crowd were completely fascinated. They did not understand why all the adults were standing so still and quiet, but they could feel that something important was happening. Some of the kids started moving their bodies to the rhythm of the music. Their parents, who were usually always telling them to be quiet and stop moving, let them dance. The music was making everyone more relaxed and open. An elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson had been feeling very lonely lately. Her husband had died 6 months ago, and her children lived far away. She came to Grand Central every few days just to be around other people, even if she did not talk to them. But today, listening to this music, she felt connected to everyone around her. A young mother offered to let Mrs. Patterson hold her baby, and the old woman felt her heart fill with joy. Marcus continued playing, but he was also watching the crowd and thinking about what would come next. In a few minutes, he would finish the song and stand up to face all these people. He would tell them who he really was and why he was here. He would announce the biggest surprise of his life, something that would affect not just the people in this crowd, but thousands of people across the city. As the music built toward its ending, Marcus felt more nervous and excited than he had felt in years. He was about to step out from behind his disguise and reveal himself to the world. He was about to turn this beautiful moment into something that would create real change in real people's lives. The song was almost over, but Marcus knew that what was about to happen next would be just the beginning. Marcus played the final notes of his song, letting each one hang in the air before fading away. The last chord echoed through Grand Central Station, and then there was complete silence. More than 200 people stood perfectly still, as if they were afraid that making any sound would break the magic of what they had just experienced. Slowly, Marcus lifted his hands from the piano keys and turned to face the crowd. The applause started softly, with just a few people clapping. Then it grew louder and louder until the whole station was filled with the sound of hundreds of hands coming together. People were cheering and whistling. Some were wiping tears from their eyes. Marcus stood up from the piano bench and raised his hand. The crowd gradually became quiet again, sensing that he wanted to say something. All eyes were on this ordinary-looking man who had just created something extraordinary. "Thank you," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly across the station. "That song means a lot to me, and I want to tell you why." He paused, looking around at all the faces staring back at him. Young and old, rich and poor, people from every walk of life. This was exactly the audience he had hoped for. 20 years ago, Marcus continued, I was homeless. I slept right here in this train station sometimes, and in Penn Station down the street. I was hungry most days. I was scared most nights. I had no money, no job, and no place to call home. A murmur went through the crowd. People looked at each other with surprise. This man did not look homeless. His clothes were old, but he seemed clean and healthy. How could someone who played piano so beautifully have been living on the streets? I wrote that song during the worst time of my life, Marcus said. I had nothing except a dream that someday things would get better. I played it on broken keyboards in community centers and hummed it to myself when I had nowhere else to go. That song kept me alive when I wanted to give up. Sarah, the nurse, felt her heart skip a beat. She was thinking about all the homeless patients she saw at the hospital. She had always been kind to them, but she had never really thought about their stories, their dreams, their talents. This man could have been one of those patients 20 years ago. Music saved my life, Marcus continued. But so did other people who gave me food when I was hungry, people who let me use computers at the library, people who believed I could do something with my life even when I did not believe it myself. David, the unemployed engineer, was hanging on every word. Here was someone who had been in an even worse situation than his own and had somehow found a way out. If this man could go from sleeping in train stations to playing piano like a professional, maybe there was hope for everyone. I want to tell you something else, Marcus said, and his voice got stronger. My name is Marcus Chun. He paused, waiting to see if anyone recognized the name. A few people in the crowd looked like they had heard it before, but most just waited for him to continue. I am the CEO of Technova Industries, Marcus announced. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. People started talking all at once. Some pulled out their phones to look up information about Technova Industries. Others just stared at Marcus with their mouths open. Technova was one of the biggest technology companies in the world. Everyone had heard of it, even if they did not know much about who ran it. You are lying, someone shouted from the back of the crowd. The CEO of Technova would not be dressed like that, playing piano in a train station. Marcus smiled. That is exactly why I am dressed like this," he said. "I wanted to remember what it feels like to be a regular person. I wanted to see if I could still connect with people the way I used to when I had nothing." Maria, who worked 2 jobs, was trying to process what she was hearing. She had cleaned the offices of rich business people, and they were nothing like this man. They wore expensive suits and never looked at her when she emptied their trash cans. But this billionaire had been talking to regular people like they mattered. "I have been planning this day for months," Marcus said. "I did not come here just to play music, although I love doing that. I came here to make an announcement that I hope will change many lives." The crowd became completely silent again. Everyone was straining to hear what he would say next. Cell phones were recording everything. A few news reporters had arrived and were setting up cameras. "Today, I am starting a new organization called the Second Chance Symphony Foundation," Marcus announced. "We are going to work to end homelessness in New York City, and we are starting with a commitment of $1 billion. The crowd erupted. People were cheering and crying and hugging strangers. $1 billion was more money than most of them could even imagine. And this man was going to use it to help homeless people, people like he used to be. "But money alone will not solve this problem," Marcus continued when the crowd quieted down. "We need people who care. We need volunteers. We need people who are willing to see homeless individuals as human beings with stories and talents and dreams, just like the rest of us." An elderly man in the crowd raised his hand. "How do we know you are really going to do this?" he asked. "Rich people make promises all the time and then forget about them." Marcus nodded. "That is a fair question," he said. "Tomorrow morning, the legal documents will be filed. The foundation will be officially created. The money will be transferred, and we will start looking for our first 100 people to help get back on their feet." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. "This has the website address where you can sign up to volunteer," he said. "We will need teachers, doctors, job counselors, mentors, and just regular people who want to help." Sarah, the nurse, was already thinking about how she could help. Her hospital could partner with the foundation to provide medical care for homeless people. She had always wanted to do more to help, but she never knew how to make a real difference. David the engineer was thinking about his skills too. Maybe he could help design better temporary housing or create technology solutions to help homeless people find jobs and services. For the first time in months, he felt like his engineering background could be useful for something important. "Why?" "Are you doing this?" asked the young woman with a baby. "You already have everything you could want." Marcus looked at her and smiled. "Because I remember what it feels like to have nothing," he said. "And because that song I just played was not just about my past. It was about hope for the future. Hope that we can build a world where nobody has to sleep in train stations or wonder where their next meal will come from." The crowd started applauding again, but this time it was different. It was not just appreciation for a beautiful performance. It was excitement about being part of something bigger than themselves. It was hope that maybe, just maybe, they could help solve one of the biggest problems in their city. Marcus looked around at all the faces in the crowd. These were the people who would make his foundation successful, not because of their money or their connections, but because of their hearts. Because they understood that everyone deserves a second chance. Just like he had been given 20 years ago, the announcement was over, but Marcus knew that the real work was just beginning. 3 days after Marcus's performance at Grand Central Station, the world had changed in ways that nobody could have predicted. The video of his piano playing and announcement had been viewed over 50 million times across all social media platforms. News stations around the world had picked up the story. But the real magic was happening in the smaller, quieter moments between ordinary people. Sarah Martinez sat in the break room at her hospital, looking at the Second Chance Symphony Foundation website on her phone. She had already signed up to volunteer, but now she was working on something bigger. She had talked to her supervisor about creating a partnership between the hospital and the foundation to provide free medical care for homeless people. "We could set up a clinic," Sarah had explained to her boss. Nothing fancy, just basic health care, checkups, vaccinations, treatment for common illnesses. A lot of homeless people avoid hospitals because they think they cannot afford treatment. Her supervisor had been interested. The hospital had been looking for ways to give back to the community, and this seemed like a perfect opportunity. Sarah was already imagining how good it would feel to help people who really needed it. Instead of just going through the motions of her regular job, at his apartment across town, David Kim was working on his laptop late into the night. He had not found a regular job yet, but he had found something better. He was designing plans for small, affordable housing units that could be built quickly and cheaply. The foundation had put out a call for innovative ideas, and David wanted his to be one of them. Each unit would cost about $5,000 to build, David typed in his proposal. They would be small but comfortable, with basic utilities and enough space for 1 or 2 people. We could put them in empty lots around the city, creating small communities where people could live while they get back on their feet. David had been working on the plans for 3 straight days, barely stopping to eat or sleep. For the first time since losing his job, he felt like he was doing something important, something that mattered more than just making money for some big company. Maria Santos had organized a meeting with 20 other women from her neighborhood. They met in the community center where Maria sometimes brought her mother for activities. All of the women worked hard jobs for low pay, but they wanted to help the foundation in whatever way they could. Many of us speak Spanish, Portuguese, and other languages, Maria explained to the group. The foundation needs translators to help homeless people who do not speak English well. We can volunteer a few hours a week to help people fill out forms, understand their options, and communicate with social workers. The women were excited about the idea. They knew what it felt like to struggle with language barriers and to feel invisible in a big city. If they could help other people avoid those same problems, they wanted to do it. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman who had been feeling lonely since her husband died, had found a new purpose too. She had contacted the foundation about using her empty house to provide temporary housing for homeless families. Her children had been trying to get her to sell the house and move to a smaller apartment, but now she had a reason to keep it. I have 4 bedrooms and nobody to fill them, she had told the foundation coordinator. I would love to have a family stay here while they look for permanent housing. The house is too quiet anyway. The foundation was still working out the legal details, but they were very interested in Mrs. Patterson's offer. She was already preparing the rooms and buying extra furniture. For the first time in months, she felt excited about waking up each day. All across the city, similar stories were playing out. A restaurant owner had decided to donate leftover food to homeless shelters every night instead of throwing it away. A group of college students had started a program to teach job interview skills. A barbershop owner was offering free haircuts to help people look good for job interviews. Marcus was amazed by the response. He had expected some people to volunteer, but he had not expected the flood of calls, emails, and visits to the foundation's temporary office. In just 3 days, over 5,000 people had signed up to help in some way. The foundation's website had crashed twice from too much traffic, but Marcus was most proud of the people he had met at Grand Central Station. Sarah had emailed him about her hospital clinic idea. David had submitted his housing designs. Maria had organized her translator group. These were the people who had been standing right there when he made his announcement, and they were the ones turning his words into action. Marcus decided to return to Grand Central Station exactly 1 week after his first performance. He did not announce it ahead of time. He just showed up at the same time of day, wearing the same old clothes, and sat down at the same piano. This time, people recognized him immediately. A crowd gathered before he even started playing. But Marcus had not come to make another big announcement. He had come to say thank you. I want to play that song one more time, he told the crowd. But this time, it is not just my song. It belongs to all of us now. It is the song of second chances and new beginnings. It is the song of people who care about each other. As Marcus played, people in the crowd started singing along, even though the song had no words. They hummed the melody and swayed to the rhythm. Some people cried, remembering how the music had made them feel the week before. Others smiled, thinking about all the good things that had happened since then. When the song ended, Marcus stood up and looked around at the crowd. Many of the same faces were there from the week before, but there were new faces too. People who had heard about what happened and wanted to be part of it. The Second Chance Symphony Foundation has officially opened, Marcus announced. We have rented our first building. We have hired our first staff members. And next week we will welcome our first 10 people who need a place to stay and a chance to rebuild their lives. The crowd cheered, but it was a different kind of cheering than the week before. This time, people were not just excited about hearing something amazing. They were excited about being part of something amazing. But I want you to know, Marcus continued, that this foundation is not really about me or my money. It is about all of you. It is about Sarah, who is setting up a medical clinic. It is about David, who designed beautiful new housing. It is about Maria, who organized a team of translators. It is about Mrs. Patterson, who is opening her home to a family in need. As Marcus mentioned each name, those people felt a surge of pride and happiness. They had never expected to be recognized for their volunteer work, but hearing their names called out in front of hundreds of people made them feel like heroes. This is how real change happens, Marcus said. Not because one person has a lot of money, but because many people decide to care. Not because someone makes a big announcement, but because ordinary people do ordinary acts of kindness every single day. Marcus sat back down at the piano and played one more short song. This one was not the song he had written 20 years ago. This was a new song, one that he was making up as he played it. It was a song about community and hope and the amazing things that could happen when people work together. When he finished playing, Marcus did something he had never done before as a CEO. He walked into the crowd and started shaking hands with people, hugging them, and thanking them personally. For everything they were doing, the foundation would go on to help thousands of people over the years. It would build housing, provide job training, offer medical care, and give people the support they needed to rebuild their lives. But Marcus would always remember that it all started with a song and a group of strangers who decided to care about each other. And every month, Marcus would return to that same piano at Grand Central Station, not as a billionaire CEO, but as a person who understood that the most beautiful music comes from people working together to make the world a little bit better.